Oh, that's right. I have to keep track of all the insults.
See, now she's like saying that I would say insults, but I didn't even say that insult.
You're the one that calculated your averages.
I didn't calculate. I just threw out a number. All right, so yeah, computer crashed yesterday at the end of your period, so everything that I had written down kind of went away. But here's what we remember: Shay going,
Yeah, I have it all written down.
hey, I pretty much know where we were. So far as we kind of had a list going of things that were going on with Shiflet. So we had mentioned like Carpenter on one side, Conman on the other, Angel of God on one side, Hostile on the other, and then all those kinds of things. And the whole idea with it is not that we're going, okay, Shiflet is Jesus, similar to how we were kind of going with McMurphy, not taking it that far. But physically, what makes him a little bit off? Okay, doesn't have one arm, so he has kind of mentions a stump that's on the one part, even when he's in the car driving off. The stump I don't think you mentioned this part at the other class yesterday. We talked about him in Sunset. So when he first shows up, and the sun is setting down, and he pretty much goes, "Boy, I'd love to see that." And I would pay $1 million to see that happen every night. And the older Luciano goes, "Yeah, it happens all the time." When he kind of makes a shape, what do we get in the first page? I want to say it's like the 5th paragraph down. There's a cross, and then there's another word that goes in front of it. You're absolutely right there. There's a cross. It's in a little paragraph. Makes a crooked cross. I'm going to go, what do you notice about this? People go, alliteration. And I go, good job. Pardon? Juxtaposition. Why juxtaposition? So if we're taking connotation, where you have cross, you mentioned, positive, salvation, something that is sacred, could be holy. Crooked. If something is crooked, what would be like synonyms for crooked? Unbalanced, yeah. It's just kind of like off. That picture is crooked. Sorry. Get the laser level off. Johnny's crooked. So, like, what's a crook? Yeah, a criminal. So if we were to go, Johnny's crooked, we don't mean that he's like walking sideways. And like 20 years ago, there were V8 commercials where if you didn't drink your V8, you'd be walking down the whole sideways and all that stuff. Commercials have come a long way since then. Actually, we don't even have them anymore because we just stream stuff now. But yeah, if you're crooked, your morals are off. Your actions are somewhat off in the sense that you are a crook, or in Shiflet's case, a con man. So from the get-go, the idea of this crooked cross getting mentioned, really does kind of establish that juxtaposition that there's going to be some change here going between salvation and going between, some kind of criminal aspect that's going to be happening. And I think as we were ending yesterday, even kind of reinforcing when he's driving off into the turnip cloud thunderstorm that's going on, wipe the slime from the earth. It could be eradicate him, get rid of him, or kind of cleanse him. And I mentioned to you that one of the things that O'Connor does in a lot of her stories, obviously this one included, and A Good Man's Hard to Find, she uses ambiguity where you can kind of pull out a lot of different interpretations from it. Not ambiguity in the sense that it's vague and not properly done, but ambiguity in that you can certainly pull and support from the text multiple interpretations. Which leads to, what's the big question then when it comes into all this kind of stuff? why have a character like him have seemingly, and I'd say more obvious, horrible elements to him, but at the same time be a carpenter that helps people? Why include a line, that he had a modest look on his face, like he had just raised it from the dead, so far as the car that he's driving along, doing all these helpful things?
I think you said yesterday that she likes to play with the idea that everyone is innate, it has parts of them that are good, parts of them that are bad. And even though people may seem like they are bad, they have good qualities in them. I think you said something like that.
Yeah, and no one is solely, good or evil. Thought about doing a soul pun, but that would confuse people. I think I can't spell. And one of the things that she includes in a lot of stories also is like rotten things happen to good people. And I mean, Lucy Nell, younger Lucy Nell, Shay, what'd she do wrong in her life? As far as we know, absolutely nothing. Yet she's the one who gets left at the roadside diner, falling asleep like with. But she has lunch and the food is paid for, so that's okay. But she's basically been neglected at that point. What does Bailey's wife or the little baby do wrong with their existence? And a good man is hard to find. As far as we know, absolutely nothing. Yet we still know what ends up happening to them and a lot of folks within that family. So rotten things do happen to good people, and then you'll also have good things happen to bad people, and then we do the DRQ about which happens more: rotten things to good people, or good things to bad people. You think?
So I had a thought about the very ending of her story where you said the term pub. I'm trying to figure out what that meant. I'm thinking maybe a tornado.
At the very least, it
Yeah.
certainly would be. Yeah, hold on. They don't have stuff
And
written.
I thought if he's driving into a storm and tornado, he might know that, hey, I'm driving into a tornado. I might not survive. And maybe that's what he's saying, rid the earth of the slime. He's saying, hey, I'm about to die and I'm not a great person.
That's his microburst. I just forgot the S. It's at the very least some kind of drastic storm. This isn't going to be like the little kind of rain cloud that's going to be happening. And not that we have to kind of connect them all, but in some ways it's kind of similar to what's happening to grandmother in the second story. Where you kind of have that moment of realization where she has the gun to her head and she very well might not survive. He's driving off into the storm. He very well might not survive. Now, he does have the ability to do something. He could turn around and go the other way. Grandma doesn't really have that option in her short story. So he does decide, kind of keep on going. Absolutely, yes. No one is solely good or solely evil. And kind of taking this and extending it, because no one is solely a good person or a bad person, what do you think, and I don't mean pulling stuff from the story, this is kind of more of your own thoughts, what's that line between good and evil for most people? Well, in the sense of, it could be, what makes Virginia good or what makes Virginia bad. Would you like to buy some Girl Scout cookies? You will buy some Girl Scout cookies. But how big is that separation, that line between being someone who's considered good, someone who's considered average, someone who's considered mediocre, someone who's considered holy, someone who's considered wretched? Like, what are you?
Same mediocre.
You're mediocre. It doesn't count as an insult. I asked her, I gave her the option.
I feel like it's kind of bleak because depending on what you do or say, you can just as easily move up or down on the spectrum.
Bleak was the word you used? Okay. Bleak kind of, like we'll talk about sometimes there's a thin line. I think you're kind of going in that direction with it. Thin line between the two. Marie, we'll come over to you then.
I don't think there's like a separation at all
your motives. Like, I know, like, in a lot of books I read, like, sometimes the antagonist has, like, a sad backstory, so they think that what they're doing is good, but then other people think it's bad, so, like, it all depends on your perspective.
Okay, so not like not a necessarily an intent on your part to be good or bad, good,
Yeah.
evil,
Just, like, your reason behind it.
circumstances, and we could go that's flawed reasoning, but in person's mind, it would still make sense, be logical kind of thing. Okay, not that I'm here to inflict pain, but this is just the way that I do things. That's my excuse. I'm not here to inflict pain. It's just the way I do things.
I think also when she was talking about perspective, I mean, I think it can be very contradictory, but like, for example, like I might think, oh, this person is wonderful, they're very kind, they're very moral, they're very smart, but Morgan might be like, nah, they're a bag of trash, they're horrible, I hate the way they are, and so it can be relative.
Sure, and I mean the amount maybe Morgan knows the person better than you, or maybe Morgan had a really bad first impression in kindergarten and hasn't been able to get over that hurdle since then, and you've seen the good in me since then and have appreciated me. You still stuck on the bag of trash. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Why would this be of concern for O'Connor? Remember any details? Yeah. Am I good or am I bad?
You said she's
I did a little bit.
You said she's Southern.
Said yet? So that explains. She's a very strict Catholic. Okay. So she's a strict Catholic in the South, which is somewhat unusual, just based on geographic breakdowns of religions and things like that. More Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist is going to tend to be in the South. So and that could kind of be a two-way street. Some folks would look at her as being the Catholic, and she kind of looks. I don't want to say that she's more pious than others and looks down upon other people, but she certainly has a stricter, more conservative way of looking at things than a lot of people around her would.
Well, she died at like a relatively young age, didn't she?
Yeah, she's 39. Bless you.
So, being a Catholic, wouldn't she be worried about what happened after?
Probably. So in some ways, then she's kind of could be potentially, and doesn't mean that necessarily concerned, in that, oh my goodness, I'm a bad person, because I write stories about bad things that happen to good people or whatnot. But in a situation that I certainly can't speak to, but when she's writing this, she knows that she does have a death sentence in a certain sense because she has been diagnosed with lupus. She knows that it is going to end her life at some point. She does not know exactly when. But she certainly knows that, it's going to be sooner rather than later. I'm 39, so she dies when she's 39. That's, for me, for you, that's like, well, that's a long way off. That's still 20-some years. For me, I'm going to go, yeah, that's okay. Yep. I can understand that now. So there's certainly, at the very least, going to be question about her own mortality, and mentioning that if you're if you are a strict Catholic, now I can't spell. Not that I could in the first place. If you're worried about your mortality, I think there's another M word that's going to go along with that as well. Because what kind of determines your mortality in some ways? Your morality. And, if you're Siddhartha, you're not worried about it probably as much. Or, if you're Govinda, you're going to be coming back no matter what. It's going to be in the circle. We'll get out of it eventually. But, if you're O'Connor, strict Catholic background, it could be the sense of, okay, that day is coming. I'm either going to go up or down, or I could be stuck in purgatory. So we kind of have that third option. But that's a pretty heavy, weighty kind of fairly ominous, looming aspect of your life. That's a lot of questions that you might not be ready to deal with when 27, 28, 32, 39.
Could you argue that they're just trying to like save themselves, and especially Shiflet and the grandma, because they're like, oh, I'm gonna die. I've been a bad person. Now it's time to be a good person and to save myself.
And certainly the placement of the title, "The Life You Save May Be Your Own." I've just left my wife. I mean, they're married, but just left my wife at the diner. "The life you save may be your own." I'm gonna pick up the hitchhiker. Come in the car, Johnny. Your mother is a good person. Worst thing ever happened was when I left my mother behind, and then he gets mad and jumps out. It's like I did this. I tried, and I got turned down by it. I tried to offer some salvation to someone. Didn't work. Going off into the cloud. Okay, this is it. Wipe the slime away from the earth. Maybe it'll be a cleansing moment. Maybe it's a little bit of a repent that kind of starts to happen at that moment where you realize things are going the way that they are. But yeah, the placement of that title at the end, and I think as people are reading the story, how the heck is this going to be the name of the story? I don't understand anything here with Alex saving a life from cheating a woman out of her car and taking her daughter away. Well, after you do all those horrible things, then you kind of start to realize maybe I could save my own life if I can still turn it around, because that depending upon your viewpoint, that line between good and evil could be something fairly thin. Maybe I'm helping out old mom Lucy now by taking the daughter away. Sure, it might look bad that I left her at the diner, but I made her life easier. Did I get saved? No. Do you have something, Virginia? No? Okay. So yeah, certainly that potential kind of exists within both, and it may not be determined by necessarily one action. It could be a host of things, but it could be something where you feel the weight of that kind of decision. But for Shiflet, why again does that name good? Not only does it give him kind of like that the crook kind of idea that we have with that juxtaposition, but literally you can shift between being someone who is unbalanced to having that potential of salvation. Who ultimately has to make that call, though? I mean, are you going to be trash or are you going to be good? She's the one that's got to kind of make that call. And I think where some of that the strict Catholic conservative viewpoint could be is you're the one who has to make that decision. You're the one who has to kind of own up to those sins, as opposed to there's some belief with maybe a more liberal denomination or viewpoint that you're going to be okay no matter what. Everyone's going to be saved. She could be going, I don't know, Johnny. You need to do some things, to kind of shape up a little bit, and that's where that kind of criticism can start to come through, or at least awareness that you need to be ready in order to kind of save yourself. But certainly, I think those would be some internal questions that you can have as well. Thinking about a big picture, knowing that rhetorical analysis is going to happen, whether we're dealing with this story or the next one. We mentioned some things here like juxtaposition, and we were certainly highlighting some other things yesterday. What would be some devices that are present within this story that we could kind of put on a short list that you might potentially investigate a little bit more?
Symbolism.
Okay, specifically with. Okay, and we were doing those discussion posts, and just because Hannah put something on a discussion post doesn't mean she can't use it for her essay. So you could decide that you want to do some symbolism with character names. Just mentioned the juxtaposition. And not that juxtaposition only has to be crooked cross, but there could be, other things with it. Sure. I mean, yeah, when we're saying carpenter, hotspot, raising, from the dead, there's enough of it that it starts to stack on one another that, I know they're different, but I'm going to put imagery with it because I think a lot of times people kind of pull those from the same things. I think I mentioned yesterday his smile. He has a snake smile. He has a smile like a weary snake waking up by the fire. So if we go with like, simile. You say that with so much like angst towards metaphor. I remember there was a metaphor.
Okay. I hate using metaphors in verbal device because I feel like you can never find them after I've read.
That's the nice thing with a short story.
Yeah.
you can go back and find them a little bit better. He's a con man, getting conned. O Lord, break forth and wash the slime from this earth. Because who's he talking to? Well, he's not talking to the earth, but he's talking to God. But God's not there. So that's apostrophe because you're speaking to someone who's not present. And for like the bonus point, what's apostrophe when you're talking to a deity? No, that's not it.
It was an actual word. Was it worship? No, wait.
Begins with an I.
Invocation.
Invocation. You okay? Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of 9 because we put details and imagery together. So you're going to be coming up with 3, and there's certainly more things that you could do besides just the ones here that are listed. But certainly, there are options that are going to be therefore available to you. We'll talk about this more on Monday, but I'll let you know right now. You're going to do your 3 devices. We're going to do 3 body paragraphs. You're going to have 3 examples. None of your quotations can go beyond 6 words. None of your quotations are going to go beyond 6 words.
So we're paraphrasing everything?
You're not necessarily, because you're still going to have 2 direct quotations, but you're going to be a little bit more choosy about what you end up quoting. So that doesn't mean, like the juxtaposition, the crooked cross would be fairly easy, because that's like 2 words right there. Sure, yeah, it is. So what you're going to do is kind of blend them in a little bit more so that we're not worried about taking lengthy quotes, but we're taking the part that we just want and incorporate that into the sentence.
Could we do something where it's like you have like 2 words, the ellipse, and then like the ellipse throughout the whole paragraph?
Yes, but the words that get included, those are the ones therefore that are considered. So you wouldn't go, word, 20 words later, word, and I want you to read all of those words. I'm just taking the ones that are going to help. And I don't really think it's going to be as big of a deal as people think it is initially. Because, no, you're not going to be paraphrasing, but you're being picky and choosy. And really, and a lot of folks are doing a pretty good job with this with your revision assistant essays, where you kind of just took the part that you needed and incorporated into your own writing. Now, a big difference between the revision assistant essay and this one is for revision assistant, how many examples did you need per body paragraph? You only needed 1. Here, we're still going to be kind of going with our 3. Some folks are going, okay, like, Virginia, did you think of that metaphor or find it yet? No. So Virginia goes scouring through the metaphor, and you don't have to find it right now. Maybe she ends up finding 1 metaphor. Or for that juxtaposition, person wants 1, has crooked cross and can't come up with something else. I still need 3 examples. Well, what else can you quote besides metaphors that aren't there, or maybe 4 examples of juxtaposition? Well, I'm explaining how my devices validate the
So just the
overall argument. So I might be quoting some things, still with 6 words or less, but I could be quoting some things that are validating, you know, in what way is he crooked, in what way is he kind of holy, what would be validating the overall argument that you end up deciding to go with. So rather than having, here's my first example, here's my second example, here's my third example, the hope is that it's going to be more like just a building of a general argument, where you might have 3 examples of imagery or 2 examples of illusion, but you also might have some examples that are getting quoted in that's basically validating how that example works, how that argument works, what the relation is among all of these different things. So, like I said, we'll talk a little bit more on Monday after, you know, we got both stories kind of fresh in mind. Morgan's already getting work. Any other thoughts about this one? Yeah, there are, actually.
The only thing that I found to be a metaphor so far was says the world is almost rotten. But I'm only on page 3. So.
Kind of in the sense that it's rotting away.
Yeah.
I know we're doing like the rhetorical analysis, but like any ideas about like what the actual like prompt is, like what the
It is in your syllabus. It is very vague. Identify the rhetorical devices O'Connor uses to advance her argument. So would you like you have ownership of the argument. So you and Libby could do the same story, but could have 2 different, probably related somewhat, but you could have 2 different arguments. Sometimes, and the reason for that is sometimes when you get prompt, like you just had with the last child in the woods, you'll get things that is, you know, we talk about the separation between people and nature, where it's fairly specific. Others are going to be, you know, what are the devices that the author uses to advance his or her argument. So it's more of you interpreting what that argument is. And keep in mind, just like we talked about with Cuckoo's Nest, like you don't have to feel forced to certainly kind of get into religious illusions and all of those things. But I think you could write about, you know, morality, duality, you know, that thin line that exists between people, and that doesn't mean it has to turn into a religious-based discussion by any means. You're gonna pick one. You're gonna pick one. You're gonna pick one. What do you think about Grandma? There's always those 1 or 2 that like her, and I don't get it, Emily.
She just wanted to dance with her grandkids, and then they just yelled at her.
Well, she knows she's not going to be old herself, so she can be critical of.
It kind of surprised me that she predicted all the bad things were gonna happen, but she was also on all of them.
So grandmother, cause of all the bad stuff. Pity Sing. That dog's name is Pity Sing. No, you're not going to do that?
Yeah, you can't name it if you're gonna cut off his leg. You can name it afterwards.
Can we name the leg separately?
Yeah, sure, I'll bring it into class.
Any other thoughts about grandmother?
I just think she was told to try to share with her grandchildren.
The kids are bratty.
They're awful.
Yeah.
The kids are the worst.
It doesn't justify the grandma's actions.
No, but the kids weren't funny though. They were
True.
like, "Mom, and nobody died." Like,
Yeah,
they
they
did.
did,
So, I think they were like comedic relief. See, the kids were brats.
And I don't know this for sure, but I find it interesting that the one kid's name is John Wesley.
Yeah, I found that also very.
Historically, who's John Wesley?
The founder of the Methodist Church.
He's the founder of the Methodist Church. So you have a strict Catholic writer who, you know, could be sometimes, you know, maybe being a little critical of you know, people who are have less faith or concerned about things than her. So, all right, let's take the little kid, make him bratty, get shot. Hey, his name's John Wesley. His best friend's Martin Luther. You know, that part doesn't get
Maybe it had
included.
two boys.
But you have June Star, you have John Wesley, and you know it is a fairly kind of common name, but for her, I think it's a little ironic that ends up being one of the names that she ultimately kind of pulls in. So you got grandmother, you have bratty children. Bailey certainly doesn't come across as being the best son in the whole
Bailey, I
entire.
just don't.
One thing, real quick. Well, we'll talk about it.
Nailed it.